Hello everyone, my name is William Benson and I'm Chief Executive of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, and this is the second of what we expect may become a series of discussions with local businesses to try and understand concerns and see what we can do to help. So last time round we managed to do it physically, and because of the lockdown we're all doing it via Skype, so hopefully the technology will work. And we've got on the line the Right Honourable Greg Clark, our local MP. We've also got hello. Ross Feeney. Hello, Greg. Yeah, we've got Ross Feeney, who is the Chief Executive of the Local Business Improvement District, and we've also got Sheila Coburn, who is our Revenues and Benefits Manager. So I'll ask them each just briefly to introduce themselves. So, Greg.
Thanks. It's Greg Clark here. I think I'm known to everyone. I think last time we spoke, it was before we'd had the various announcements from the Chancellor in terms of support for employees and support for small businesses and the self-employed. Now, obviously, things have moved on from that, and I hope everyone's had communications on that. It's on the government website, but I know that there are some questions of clarification there that we can address today, and there are some points that I will take back to the Chancellor to press him further.
Thanks very much, Greg. Sheila, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Sheila Coburn. I'm Head of Revenues and Benefits at Tunbridge Wells Borough Council. So I'm planning to just give an introduction on what we've done so far and then go through some questions that we've been asked, which hopefully I can answer.
Smashing. Thanks, Sheila. And Ross, last but not least, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone that's listening at home. I hope you're all well and healthy. My name is Ross Feeney. I'm the Chief Executive of Royal Tunbridge Wells Together, which is the Town Centre Business Improvement District. It's about 700 companies within the town centre that all contribute towards improvement to the town centre that are directly funded by businesses themselves.
Great, thanks very much. So what I'm going to do now is, in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Sheila, who's got the first bank of questions. Just to be clear, what we've done is we've asked through our website and social media channels people to put in their questions, and we've also been collating any questions that have come in outside of that process. We're probably not going to be able to answer all of them. We'll do our very best, but certainly what we will be doing is understanding the issues so that we can press them with government. So the first bank of questions we've got relate to business rates and the grants associated with them. Before I put the questions to Sheila, I'm going to ask her very briefly to give a sort of statement and introduction as to what we've been doing.
Thank you, William. So we've contacted all businesses that we believe qualify for the 10,000 grant and the 25,000 grant. You've had with that there's a link to a form on our website where you can give your bank details so the grants can be paid. If you haven't heard anything from us by next Monday, please contact the business Covid-19 email address, which I'll give you at the end, and we can check why you haven't received anything. There was a technical problem on Wednesday which was sorted, so apologies to anybody who was affected by that. Once your application has been submitted, you should receive payment within 10 working days. Now, the government has asked that we validify all applications for the grant. So all applications are being run through a Cabinet Office tool called Spotlight. If for any reason an application is red flagged by Spotlight, this could delay you getting paid within the 10 working days, but we will be contacting you. So some of the questions that we've been asked, some councils have an online application form up and running for grants. Why doesn't Tunbridge Wells? Well, we do, and we've had a form up and running since Wednesday. When can you physically receive the grants? That will be within the 10 working days. And how and when? So that would be directly into bank accounts. We have already contacted everybody on the list. I've got a question here. Some businesses I work with have not received them, while others have. Let us know if you haven't heard anything by Monday, and then we can look further into it for you. Is there a process due to be put in place for those not contacted? There is the business COVID-19 address, which is businesscovid19@tunbridgewells.gov.uk. Another question is, if I normally receive rates correspondence by letter to my business property and I have to stay at home, what is the advice for getting hold of the letter? That is for you to decide. For security reasons, we cannot give out business rates numbers over the telephone. Some other frequently asked questions that we've had: how do I know if the grant letter is a scam email? It will take, if you look on our website at tunbridgewells.gov.uk, you will be able to see there's a lot of information about these grants. Can you send me my rates account reference number? We would need some validation from who you are, and as I said before, for security reasons, we shouldn't be giving out the business rates reference number. Do you enter the address of your property or the headquarters on the form? It's the property in question that you're claiming the grant on. And if you've got a wrong business rates name on the letter or bill, then you need to contact the business rates team, which is business rates, that's one word, at midkent.gov.uk. Do you need to pay the grant back? No, you don't. It's not a loan. It is a one-off payment that the government is awarding, and you're not required to pay it back. Can I apply to review the rateable value of my property so that I am eligible? Once again, I would suggest you contact the business rates at midkent.gov.uk for that question. I've been told I'm not eligible for a local authority grant, but I've had to close my premises, for example, a dentist. Unfortunately, dentists do not qualify under the grant scheme, so we can point you in the direction of other grants that might be available. And those are all the questions that we've had. Thank you.
I should say that since the scheme was announced, there have been numerous changes to it where other premises have been brought within the scope of the grants. So presumably any kind of sector or body that's seeking support should sort of lobby through their professional organisations or representative bodies, and it may be that there'll be further changes in the offing. So
can I just say something on that?
Of course,
William, because I think you're absolutely right. So the nature of these schemes has been the opposite of how government initiatives are normally launched, which is to say, usually there'd be consultation with business sectors and specialists. There'd be a comprehensive guide having thought of all the eventualities, and then it's launched. In this case, it's the other way around. So there's been headline policies launched, support for the employed, support for the self-employed, and then the detail has followed. And as William says, some not just changes to the detail, but some additions, different sectors being added, different problems being ironed out. So this will be ongoing. I think it has to be that way if you want to get the main policy out quickly, then it does need to be followed up. But it is worth talking to your professional bodies if you are part of a trade where you have such a representative. Dentists were mentioned just recently. The British Dental Association is mounting a case to the Treasury, which I'm supporting, for the special circumstances of dental surgeries to be recognised, where they have to do obviously some business. They have to be open for emergencies, so they can't be completely furloughed, but equally most of their regular appointments are lost. So do get in touch with your professional bodies and let me know through my website, gregclark.org, so that I can support it with the Chancellor.
Great, thanks very much, Greg. So the next sort of range of questions are largely on some of the central government initiatives that have been published. Now, I'm sure everyone's aware, Greg isn't a minister in the government. He does chair a select committee, but he has been very effective at lobbying on your behalf and on behalf of all businesses. And I think a number of the measures that have been announced have come pretty hot on the heels of representations he's been making. So, Greg, I don't know whether you want to pick up the questions, or whether you want me to ask them, or whether you just want to pick them up. You've got copies of them.
Why don't you put them to me, then I'll try and...
So the first question, couple of questions relate to limited companies, and really asking how the Chancellor can say that self-employed need to be on a level playing field with employed, those that pay national insurance. The rules exclude support from any sole trader who started business in 2019 and give support to other self-employed a full 12 weeks after furloughed employees are getting payments.
So it's a good example of, I think, what I was talking about the headlines coming out, and then there have been amendments and clarifications. But just to what you said at the beginning, William, the schemes that have been introduced have very much reflected what businesses across Tunbridge Wells were saying to me during the first few weeks when Parliament was sitting. Unfortunately, it's not at the moment. I was able, as some of you saw, to put those points, and both on the self-employed and the employed side, the scheme that I proposed was in effect the scheme that was adopted, and so I'm very grateful to everyone for their input into shaping that. It's made a big difference. But in terms of the self-employed, limited companies, I do recognise are a particular problem. There's one clarification that is important, and some listeners may not be aware of it. The government has clarified that if you are the sole director of a limited company and you take some of your income through PAYE and some of it through dividends and function as a director, it is still possible to furlough yourself as an employee. That's to say, to avail yourself of the 80% of salary that the government can contribute, at the same time as meeting your statutory duties as a director. There's been clarification on that you can do both. So that I know that's of help to some people, but I do recognise that for those people who are self-employed and take either all or the vast majority of their income not through PAYE but through dividends, that is excluded at the moment. The reasons for that are design reasons. It's you can identify salaries. You can identify what's in self-assessment tax returns to distinguish between the dividend income from people who are in effect self-employed and those who are shareholders more generally. I'm told has been very difficult to draw a line there. I know that is very rough justice for those self-employed who do take their income in that way. In terms of the delay in payment, again, the aim is by June to have the payments to the self-employed. That's not a deliberate way to defer payment to save money. The payments will be backdated to the beginning of March. It is purely an organisation and logistical task to create the system that allows the right assessment of income to be made and payments to be made. If it can be done earlier, it will be done earlier. I know that people sometimes have very pressing cash needs right now. The universal credit is available for this purpose, and the banks have been told that they've got to forbear and to understand that money is coming to people in that position. And obviously, as you know, payments of tax and VAT have been deferred. But I do know that this is a pressing problem, and obviously, the sooner those payments that can be made, the better.
Thanks, Greg. So I think that a specific suggestion was made was that government should give small limited businesses with profit of less than £50,000 the same help as the self-employed and the pay-as-you-earn employed, and then it would be fair.
Well, I think this is one of the areas that I can go back to the Treasury, to the Chancellor, and in the spirit of the scheme that has been put forward, to see whether it's possible to widen the scope so that it does capture people who quite legitimately and quite rightly are in effect in the same position as sole traders, but just happen to have their businesses organised in a slightly different way.
Okay, great. So the next tranche of questions relate to support from banks and the loan scheme, and I think the sound has shifted on this overnight. So the first question is someone saying they've got the distinct impressions that banks will use their normal lending criteria, and that with businesses, a significant number of businesses that need support, and liquidity being an issue, that the majority of applications are likely to be declined. So any confirmation of the criteria would really help.
So this is kind of breaking news, and again, it reflects representations that I've had from people probably on this call, businesses across Tunbridge Wells, who were reporting that this loan scheme was simply virtually impossible to access, or personal guarantees were being extracted, which were frankly unreasonable to give at a time when we don't know how long this is going to last, and what degree of indebtedness a company is going to have. I wrote to the Chancellor about it. Other MPs did across the country representing their constituents. And so overnight, there has been a reboot of this loan system. It means that businesses will not have to give a personal guarantee. And crucially, to the point that William made in reading out the question, initially, you had to go through a normal loan application process first, and have exhausted that before you were entitled to go for the government one. That has now been scrapped, so you can go straight into the government-backed loan scheme. Obviously, there still is the interface with your bank, your particular bank, and my experience acting on behalf of constituents over the last few weeks is that the practice and the demeanour varies considerably from bank to bank and from branch to branch often. My view is very clear that the banks have an obligation to support their business customers through this. They've been given the means to do so. They frankly just need to think back 10 years ago, in which the taxpayers across the country rode very quickly and comprehensively to their rescue. So there should be no excuse, there should be no pencil sucking and chin scratching about reasonable applications. If you are having difficulty with your bank, if they are being unreasonable, please get in touch with me via my website, gregclark.org, and I'll take it up with the chief executive of whichever bank is responsible.
Got a bank in question here. So that there is the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, and another questioner has said that they tried to apply several times with Barclays. There was a 4-hour wait. They were eventually offered a Barclays business loan online at 12.9%. It's an outrageous interest rate, but they had no choice to take it in order to pay freelance staff and bills. Will they be able to transfer this loan to the government-backed scheme?
Well, that's a very good case. Obviously, the situation has changed overnight with the ability not to go through the conventional loans system, but to go directly to the government loan. If you have the details of that questioner, William, then I will get in touch with them after this call to pursue it with the bank. It seems reasonable to me that you should be able to transfer it. Okay,
thanks very much indeed. And I don't know whether that, perhaps that's something I'll ask Hilary to do. If that's come in from someone, we'll get back to them directly. And the last question then on loans and banking is someone saying that their bank has offered them a business mortgage holiday for 6 months, but they still have to pay the interest on the mortgage, so it doesn't really feel like a holiday. Does the government mortgage holiday scheme specify that banks can still charge for interest or not?
Well, the interest on mortgages is not cancelled, but is not being applied. There's a holiday in terms of payments rather than the accrual of interest. So I'm afraid that is the scheme that's there now.
Okay, thank you. So a few on job retention schemes, and particularly some questions about the furloughing of staff. And again, I think the guidance, we've been having a look at this ourselves, and I think the guidance is emerging. But there's someone who is a kind of director, but also an owner, saying that they need to carry out some basic functions like checking the property hasn't been broken into or the freezers are still working. And the furlough entitlement states that they can't do anything in relation to the business, but they're the only ones who can take care of the mentioned issues. So have you got any advice for someone in that situation, or is there anything you can do to pick that up with government?
Well, again, I've got to be careful that I can't give advice. As William said at the beginning, I'm not a member of the government. I'm a backbench MP, so it would be wrong for me to give you advice that's conveyed an authority that I don't possess on that. But I've said that there's been this clarification that the government's made on the duties of directors. That seems a very reasonable point that's made in connection with essentially the same thing. Are you doing what is necessary to keep the business alive, which is the point of the scheme in the first place? So I will take that to the Treasury and the Business Department to see if that can be given a clarification that is legally possible under the system.
So there's another question that's very similar that I won't ask you to answer because I think it's the same, but someone's saying that if you're an owner-managed business, there'll be some administrative tasks such as dealing with employees, banks, advisors, customer queries, negotiating with suppliers. So it's just, again, clarity as to whether that would be classified as not doing any work. Someone
I think for all of these, William, it's worth people keeping an eye very closely on the gov.uk/coronavirus website. That does have the updates, which do come fast and furious, at least they have done in recent days. And you can sign up to an alert on that website to be able to have particular updates sent to you by email. And perhaps I could just give one other shout out, which is the business hotline that Kent County Council and its partners have put on. I know from people who've used the businesses in Tunbridge Wells who've used the hotline that it's proving very useful and effective in having some technical clarifications on the rules. The hotline, if people have a pen handy, is 043 3333 602 300. So 043 602 300, and that hotline is manned 8:30 to 6:30 Monday to Friday.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So just one more we've got on this kind of the furloughing scheme, and again, I suspect the answer to this is you're going to be unable to give the clarification. So it's someone that's saying that they pay themselves a very small salary plus dividends, and the kind of 80% of the salary doesn't even cover rent and bills. So is that something that could be picked up?
Well, that relates to, I think, the question earlier, that the design of this scheme is that the salary is subject to the furlough, but I recognise that for many small businesses, that is a small, very small proportion of the income, and the scheme doesn't reimburse lost dividend income during that time. At the moment, this may be something that can be expanded, and I and others are talking to the Treasury to have this very big problem for a number of people addressed.
Okay, and the last couple for you then, Greg. So one about specific sectors. So one is from a childcare business in Tunbridge Wells that said that following the shutdown, their income's fallen to zero. They've had to furlough staff. They do qualify for the rate relief, which is welcome, but it's a saving spread over the next 10 months. It doesn't go anywhere near to addressing the immediate cash flow issues, and that with profit margins under 5%, a loan would take a lifetime to recover from. And because the premises have a rateable value of £25,500, they don't qualify for the small business rate relief. Because they're not retail and hospitality and leisure, they don't qualify for a grant. So I suspect that's another issue where there's going to have to be some, as you said earlier, the scheme gets announced and it, would need to be fine-tuned after the event. But is there anything you want to say on that?
That's right. And yes, the childcare providers across the country are mounting a pretty persuasive, I would say, case related to that. And I know that it's something that the Treasury are considering. I haven't seen the white smoke coming out of the Treasury building yet as to whether they've got a solution to it. But again, that's something that the national organisations have put a proposal to the Treasury, and it's a good example of making contact and working through your national organisation if you have one.
Okay, great. And then we've got a specific question about charities, but I know this is something...
William?
Yes, sorry.
William, sorry, could I just interject there, if that's all right? One of the things that we've picked up just in relation to that last topic was obviously the grants and the loans that are available are a fantastic lifeline in many cases for those businesses in the hospitality and leisure sector. But obviously right across the borough, but the town centre in particular, there are a vast range of office-based businesses. I can think of one in particular, which is a serviced office in the town centre that have been in touch. And of course, they're not eligible for any of these particular offers. And I think the message that we would certainly be grateful if Greg could take back to the Treasury is that, whilst the grants are fantastic for certain sectors, there are a number of other sectors that are sort of almost disenfranchised at the moment, because of their business sector, but also perhaps because they don't have the benefit of a trade that can lobby on their behalf.
All right, I'm sure, Greg. Sorry,
Rob, that's a very good point, and I've been talking to some constituents who run serviced offices and shared spaces, and they've made this point, and I will be taking it up with the Treasury next week.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Ross. So finally, Greg, there's a specific question about charities, but I don't know whether you want to say a little bit more about the charitable sector, because this is something that you and I have been talking about on a regular basis. So the question is, what are the prospects of a support package for local charities? And would it be possible to open the business rate grants to those with registered offices, not just those that have charity shops in the borough? So do you want to say something about charities?
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is that, as everyone on the call I'm sure recognises, charities are under particular pressure, doing hugely important job at the moment. They're like some businesses, but in particular for charities, the demands of certainly charities that are supporting vulnerable people has increased at the time that their income has collapsed, and it's absolutely essential that they should not only be able to survive, but be able to meet the needs that are being placed on them. And if there are any charity workers on the call, just want to put on record how much I recognise and appreciate the work that's being done at the moment. I think that there is some relief coming. I think if you look at the sequencing of the announcements that the government made, first of all, there was this scheme for the employed people, then for the self-employed. A lot of representations, including from me. I was part of a big delegation of MPs that have lobbied the Chancellor on this. The feedback that I've got is that they are working flat out on a rescue package for charities, if I can put it in that way, and that over the next few days, once it's been nailed down, that will be announced. Now, again, I'm very conscious that the anticipation of something in a few days' time is not of huge consolation to people and trustees that are worried now as to whether the charity can legitimately operate in accordance with its statutory requirements. But I think, well, I know for a fact that is something that the Treasury are working on, and I would expect an announcement very soon.
Perfect. Okay, thanks very much, Greg. So, Ross, There's a specific question about security in the town centre, which I suspect is probably more one for me. So I'll read it out, but then maybe you could just talk more generally about what the bid's up to. So the question is that as the town centre becomes quieter, in some areas the police are advising shops to remove stock from windows, and many are boarding up windows on the advice of their insurers. What coordination is going on with the police to ensure the security of the town centre overnight? So probably that is, if I just say from our perspective, what we're doing. So we are liaising regularly with the police. They are operating, well, not quite as usual, but they are, redeploying resources to take account of the, changes to circumstances, more patrols in parks, trying to kind of enforce social distancing. We are, as a borough council, our CCTV coverage is still up and running. And there is an issue around the boarding up of shops that I think we touched on our last telephone conversation, that both Greg and I are taking up with the insurance industry. And, for some, I think they're seeing it as being an unnecessary burden. But Ross, do you want to come in and talk a bit about what the bid's up to?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, William. So as the bid, we're doing absolutely everything that we can within the sort of the limited scopes that we have at the moment. Our office is closed, but any of our levy payers that want to get in touch can get in touch with me directly using my mobile, which is 07808 646 758. I'd be very happy to take any calls and answer any questions that levy payers have. In terms of our activities at the moment, we are providing regular social media updates on both our bid social media channels, but also the Royal Tunbridge Wells channels, which are at RTW Together and at Royal T Wells, both on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. We're also providing regular e-newsletter updates to all our levy payers. That's weekly updates going out to about 1,000 email addresses. If you're not receiving those because we haven't got your email address, or we haven't an email address that you can access at the moment, then please again do get in touch and we can add you to that list. We've also launched in the last couple of weeks a private WhatsApp group for all our levy payers, and again the way to join that is either by sending me a message through the mobile phone number 07808 646 758, or by using the invitation link that's gone out in the newsletters. We're trying our best to be a point of contact for all business queries and signposting to other agencies and stakeholders where we can. And one of the critical things that I think we're doing that often perhaps gets missed at the moment is that running a business can be a lonely experience. It can also be very stressful. And at the moment, it's even more lonely and even more stressful than usual, because we're all stuck inside. We can't get to our businesses. We can't talk to our colleagues as much. And there's sort of still great uncertainty about how long this is going to go on for. So what we're doing through the WhatsApp group and through all our other activities is acting as a sort of a peer-to-peer support network. So encouraging businesses to talk to one another, to share their experiences, both good and bad, so that we can all get through this in a positive way. The other thing I'd like to say is two related points. Firstly, a thank you to both you, Greg, and William, for all the work that you're respectively doing at the moment. It's a very challenging time, and I think sometimes that can get overlooked. But the second thing I wanted to add, and perhaps the most important, is a big thank you to all the businesses in the town centre and across the borough that have really stepped up recently in support of both the NHS and also the wider town centre and our local residents. There's some really great news stories of how local hotels have closed to the public but are open to NHS workers. There are a variety of takeaway companies and businesses that are offering discounts and services. So whilst the prevailing picture is one of doom and gloom, there is some really great local stories of how the community, both residential community and the business community, is coming together during this very challenging time. So please do keep in touch. The most important thing I would say for businesses, we've launched a hashtag which is TW Delivers. We're inviting any business, both in the food sector but also wider retail, that's still offering e-commerce or online trade, to use the hashtag TW Delivers on all your promotional materials. We can follow that. We can share those tweets and those posts on your behalf to widen the coverage that you're getting. So I would say to businesses is that at the moment, more than ever, you need to be proactive and engaging with your customers as best you can to let them know how you're doing, to let them know what you're doing, any special offers that you may have, so that your customers rather can keep in touch with you at this time. Thank you.
Endorse what you said about businesses stepping up to the plate. I've been bowled over by the number of businesses that have been offering to help us, the NHS and others. It really is quite remarkable. So as we've been going, Anne has been inviting people to sort of come in with other questions, and we've got just a sort of couple. I think some of them might have been covered by earlier answers. So one about the travel and tourism sector, and whether there are any grants available for those who aren't eligible for business rate grants. And I guess a similar question about those that are seasonal businesses who make most of the money in the summer. And that's certainly something I've heard from businesses with a pretty, appalling early start to the year with all the, rain we had in January and February. They were hoping to make that good later on in the year. So I guess Greg or Ross, do either of you want to say anything on those?
Perhaps I can talk about the travel industry. Again, I think this is another good example of where a broad scheme was initially announced, and then there are particular problems for particular sectors. So the travel industry and ABTA representing them are in a dialogue with the government to recognise the particular difficulties that sector has. For those that are not in the travel industry, clearly business has fallen away, but it's not possible for travel agencies to be completely furloughed, because as you would imagine, they've got a lot of clients who are ringing up wanting to cancel holidays and wanting to get refunds, and simply to shut up shop and close down would be to do them a great disservice. And so they want to have that recognised, and that again is something that I think it's quite legitimate for the Treasury to consider the particular impacts on those sectors.
Very much indeed. A couple of other ones. So Ross, we've been asked whether you can give an update on the levy.
Yes, absolutely. So the annual levy for our levy payers goes out in mid-March, and unfortunately the timing of those invoices couldn't have been any worse, because unfortunately they were landing on people's doorsteps just as they were closing up their shops for the lockdown. There's a couple of points to make. Firstly, as a bid, we are one of over 250 bids around the country, and every bid finds itself in the same position at the moment, and that is that legally bid legislation doesn't allow us to cancel the levy, nor does it allow us to waive it or provide any pro rata discounts. The only thing that we have in our gift at the moment is to not actively pursue payment collections on the levy. So we had a board meeting last week, and it was agreed that we would defer any collection of the levy for a period of 3 months to give businesses the same breathing space as they're getting with some of the other government benefits. We are at the same time, as a collective of over 250 bids around the country, lobbying government to see if there is anything that can be done about either changes to the legislation or some financial support for bids themselves to get them through this challenging period. I mean, clearly we recognise as a bid for Tunbridge Wells, we're here to support the business community in the town centre, and it makes no sense for us to be actively pursuing levy payments from businesses that are struggling in such a financial and health crisis. So we are deferring collection of the levy for the time being, because that's all we are legally able to do. The one thing I would say, and I said this last time we had one of these calls, is that the levy is collected locally, but it's also spent locally. And the message that we're getting from a lot of our levy payers, many of whom have actually already paid the levy, is that they recognise that once the shutdown is over, there's going to be a massive amount of marketing that needs to be done for the town centre, special promotions, special events, competitions and giveaways, and of course the provision of business support. And we're ideally placed to do that, and we're working very hard behind the scenes at the moment to prepare for when the shutdown ends. So although the levy invoices at the moment have come out at a very difficult time, we're very confident that over the next 12 months, once the shutdown finishes, we will be in a good position to support each one of our levy payers, whether they're retailer or office-based, in a variety of different ways to help them overcome the challenges that they're experiencing at the moment.
Great, thanks, Ross. And one final question has come in, which is around Airbnbs and whether they classify as a hospitality business. So I think I'm right in saying, Sheila will correct me if I'm wrong, that the sort of various business rate grants and exemptions are only applicable to those who pay business rates. So I'm suspecting that Airbnbs wouldn't be paying business rates and therefore wouldn't be eligible.
That's correct,
So,
yeah.
yeah, okay. So that's everything I've got. So I thought what I would do now is I would just give everyone a chance just to say something by way of closing, and then what I'll do is I will kind of run through those various websites and email addresses and phone numbers again at the end. So Sheila, is there anything you want to add?
I'll just give out those email addresses again, if I may. So there's the business COVID-19, that's all one word, at tunbridgewells.gov.uk. And there's also business rates, one word, at midkent.gov.uk.
All right, thanks very much. Ross, anything from you?
Just to again reiterate for our levy payers, if you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing ross at tunbridgewellstogether.co.uk, giving me a call on 07808 646 758. And just to reiterate, please use the hashtag TWDelivers and also to join our WhatsApp group.
Great, thanks, Ross. And Greg?
Just to say thank you, William, to everyone that is persevering through what must be the most difficult time they've ever experienced in business. It's a dreadful time, I know, and just from the national point of view, on the kind of health point of view, I think everyone knows that the next couple of weeks are going to be tough. We're approaching the peak. We're ramping up to the peak of the pandemic, and so there's going to be, I think, a lot of concern around. And so the whole social distancing message. I know this hasn't been the subject of this call, but it is there for a purpose. If we can turn the tide in infection, then we get into a situation in which we can consider how we can come out of this and how we can get the economy moving again. So this is all for a purpose, and I'm very conscious at all of the sacrifices and worry that everyone's going through. As I said several times during this, the nature of these government interventions has been quite high level and quite broad, sometimes lacking in detail. I will, on your behalf, press the Treasury to make sure that that the detail is responded to and is addressed. But there's obviously more to be done. But if you keep an eye on the website, the gov.uk website, you'll get the very latest. And one final thing, which is perhaps a bit sort of offbeat in terms of we've given official websites and official advice. If anyone follows Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, on Twitter, he's got a series of quite short, sort of 5-minute videos in which he explains in quite succinct and clear terms for self-employed people how to navigate some of the support mechanisms. So if you're on your computer, if you Google Martin Lewis or moneysavingexpert.com, his Twitter feed, and look at those videos, you might find them useful. I know some of my constituents who I've been talking to in recent days have actually found them quite helpful.
All right, thanks very much, Greg. So just a few things from me, just to kind of reiterate what everyone said about, thank you for everyone that's been helping out, and also, very, very conscious of the sort of challenges people are facing, and we'll do whatever we can to support. In terms of the various phone numbers and websites, the number that Greg gave earlier, which is for the Kenton Medway Growth Hub, that's run by Kenton Victor Chamber of Commerce, that's 03333 602 300. The government, the bit of the government website for business support is businesssupport, all one word, .gov.uk. And if you haven't caught any of that, we've got all the details on our website. So if you go to tunbridgewells.gov.uk, there's a COVID banner, and then there's a page for businesses. So I can't see anything else that's coming in either on email or social media. So if people feel this has been helpful, let us know. Maybe to that, one of the email addresses we gave you earlier on. And I think at that point I'll say thank you very much and goodbye.